Hi readers, Chris here. I'm a little bit behind schedule on my February wrap up, but the past week has just been crazy, so I'm just getting to it now. I'm going to try to go through as quickly as possible so I can get to my March TBR at the end. I actually had, I think, a really good reading month in February. Other than one book in particular, like most of the books I read, I pretty much really liked. Like even the ones that I had a few issues with, I still liked them. So without further ado, from my least favorite to my favorite, here is my February wrap up. And yes, I know I still have to review a lot of these books still, but bear with me. My least favorite book for February is a book that I have not reviewed yet, and that's going to be Beautiful Wild by Anna Godbersen. Godbersen. This is the first time I've read this author. I know she has written other books, mostly YA and YA romance type books. And I thought, February, Valentine's Day, this was a book box book. It came in one of my Spiritcraft book boxes way, way, way in the beginning of 2021. So I figured I'd give it a try. Really didn't like it. I feel like I'm just not a fan of straight romances, or maybe I just haven't read the right ones yet, because the characters in this book I found were super shallow and super annoying. And I know, like, part of the point of this book is that there's a girl and she's really, she's sophisticated, she's in society, but then she gets shipwrecked and she's supposed to, like, kind of learn that all the things she used to think were important, like, don't matter anymore. But it takes way too long for her to get there. Way too long. We're told that she has this, like, inner wild spirit that just needs to come out. And you never really see that. You're told it, but you're never shown it. And that's, like, the first rule of writing, movie making, whatever, show, don't tell. So more to come on this one, but definitely my least favorite read of February. Number 2, going from bottom to top, is going to be King's Cage by Victoria Aveyard. So this is the third book in the Red Queen series, and I already reviewed it. Obviously, I had some major problems with it, but I will say that it did end in such a way that I do want to keep reading and find out what happens next. I am not DNFing this series. I want to see how it ends. Plus, there's only one book left, so of course I'm going to read and find out what happens. I have to. I do not DNF 90% of the time, 99.9% of the time. It takes a lot for me to DNF, so I will be continuing the series and can't wait to see where it goes. Hopefully it's more well balanced than this book was. Number 3 on my list, a book that I enjoyed, but only to a point, and that's going to be a Wizard of Earthsea, which I don't remember at the time of this video if I've actually reviewed this one or not. Whoopsie. If I haven't, I will get to it, but this is a very classic fantasy tale. We have a young wizard who's basically trying to learn how to become a wizard. He makes a mistake with his magic, he gets overzealous, and he kind of releases this shadow upon the world. So then through the rest of the book, he needs to find this shadow and defeat it. It's a pretty quick, short story. It very much reminds me of Lord of the Rings in the way that it's written, because it's very heavy on, like, world building and descriptions and very light on dialogue. And if I'm being honest, I prefer books that are much more heavy on dialogue. So if you've ever read, like, Dune, the science fiction book, that's the complete opposite. Dune is all dialogue and, like, no descriptions. You have to kind of fill it in with your mind. I much prefer that style to this style, but it's still a really good story. It's a classic tale, and I don't have any of the other Earthsea books at the moment, but if I should find them while I am bargain book hunting, I will definitely be picking them up so that I can continue with it at some point in time. Number 4, I have a book that I don't think I've mentioned before, and that is going to be Searcher by Nicole Bates. I have not reviewed this one yet, but it will be coming soon. Some of you may or may not remember, I actually was a beta reader for this book back over the summer. I met Nicole Bates over on Instagram. I've read one of her books before. It was called Gutted. I read it last year and reviewed it. It was a sci-fi tale about a mother who goes into this medical facility and gets her child kidnapped. Really cool story, very personal. This is something completely different. It's a mix of sci-fi and fantasy. In this world, everyone has a stone that is basically like their soul. They come in different colors and shapes and sizes. And we have a young boy who's growing up in this society, basically assigns you a job, a role, a task, and he's assigned to be something called a searcher, which means he goes out into the wilderness, into the desert, to try and find stones that can be cut and formed into people. And then he discovers this plot to overthrow the leaders of their society. Action ensues. It's a really good story. I really enjoyed reading it the second time around in the finished version to see what had changed. So I think that's really cool. I can't wait to talk about it more. That's all I'm going to say on this one for now. 5 and 6, I had a really hard time deciding which one I liked better because I like them both pretty equally. But number 5, I am putting Percy Jackson and the Sea of Monsters. This is the second book in the Percy Jackson series. I really enjoyed this book. I know I haven't reviewed this one yet, but I will be. I didn't like it as much as book 1, not as much, but it's still got a lot of the things that I loved about the first book. It's got tons of great characters. It's got tons of great mythology. The only thing this one was missing is I really liked the whole road trip aspect of book 1, which is kind of missing in here. There is a different sort of trip and a different sort of adventure, but it didn't quite have that same feeling that I really enjoyed. So that is the only reason I put this a little bit lower than my next pick, which, moving on to my next pick, is going to be Sisters in Arms by Kaya Alderson. Now, this book was sent to me by one of my friends, Kristen's Reading Nook, over on Instagram. She read and reviewed this book back in, I guess it must have been January in the new year, and I said, wow, that book sounds really cool. And then out of the kindness of her heart, she sent me a copy, because that's what people do when you love books. They just share them. So, Kristen, if you're reading, thank you again. I know I've already said it a million times, but thank you again for sending this book to me. So, Sisters in Arms is about the all-female, all-black female army unit during World War II. Yes, this is based on a true story, which you think all the way back in World War II, that's before, the big civil rights movement, before all that stuff, but there's an all-black, all-women's unit of the army. I mean, how cool is that? Now, compared to other World War II books that I've read, other World War II historical fiction, I'm thinking of Kristen Hanna, the Nightingale, are super heavy, super depressing. They're good, but they're heavy. This one is not heavy, and that's not to say that it doesn't have important messages and important themes, because it absolutely does. But the reason I like this book so much is because it approaches everything from a very hopeful angle. It's very hopeful. It explores themes of friendship, of sisterhood, and of hope, really, in a really dark situation. So I really loved this book. Haven't reviewed it yet, I don't think. More to come on it soon. Sisters in Arms. If you're into historical fiction or World War II fiction at all, definitely recommend this one. That brings me to my favorite book of February, and this should be no surprise to anyone, and that's going to be Misery by Stephen King. Yes, I just did a full-length review discussion on this one, so I'm not going to talk about it. I'll just say, once again, if you didn't watch that video, Misery is not only one of my favorite Stephen King books, it is one of my favorite books of all time. Of all time. It's got great characters, great plot, great settings. It's just great. So if you want to know more about it, go watch that other video. now to the fun part. I'm going to quickly run down the books that I have on my TBR for this month, March 2022. Starting with my reader recommendation for the month, and that's going to be Eclectic Nightmares by Jeremy Fee. A lot of you watching this probably already know Jeremy, but if you don't, he's a fellow booktuber and he's amazing. Not only is he super kind and super supportive, but he's actually an author as well. Now, I am not a big poetry reader. In fact, this will probably be the first book of quote-unquote poetry that I've read since I had to read it in college. So I'm going to read this one because I want to support Jeremy, and honestly, I can already tell, like, especially the first couple poems in the beginning, that these are very personal and very much remind me of Jeremy. Even though he's a stranger on BookTube, I feel like I know him a little bit, and I really feel like these poems are a reflection of him, if that makes sense. So, more to come on this one. Next up, I am continuing my Stephen King journey with the next book that he published, which is going to be The Tommyknackers. I've heard of this book, but I honestly have no idea what it's really about. So I'm only a few chapters in, but I'm excited to see where this one goes. It's quite a chunky book, so I may not get it finished in March. We'll see how it goes. Next up, I have a book that I started last month that I haven't finished yet, and that, of course, is going to be House of Sky and Breath by Sarah J. Maas, the second book in the Crescent City series. At first, I was going to try to plow through this book as quickly as I could to get a review out, but then I decided, you know what, that's not me. I'm not someone who just plows through books. I like to take my time, so I'm getting down to the end. I'm going to finish it, if not this week, then by next week. So review will be coming, non-spoiler, and then if people are interested, maybe I'll do a spoiler one separate, but that'll be coming. Next up, I have my historical fiction pick for the month, and this one I'm going back to a topic that I really, really love, which is Tudor-era England. I am reading Wolf Hall by Hilary Mantel, and this is going to be a buddy read with Reading Nymph, whose channel I will link down below. But Kristen, she read, I inspired her to read The Other Boleyn Girl by Philippa Gregory, and this is supposed to be about Thomas Cromwell, who was kind of like, he was a person in Henry Tudor's court that kind of observed everything, so it will be interesting to see things from his point of view. Would definitely be curious to see how this one goes. I guess I can say I already am not loving this book already. I'm sorry. Sorry, Kristen. I already told you that in one of your YouTube videos. The style of writing is very, very different, so it's a little jarring. I'm hoping that I'll get used to it and it'll make the rest of the book easier to read, but we'll see what happens. There may be a rant coming in the future. You never know. Next up, I had an impulse because I was gonna read the final book in the Red Queen series, but if any of you saw my recent bargain book haul, this book is just too beautiful not to read, and I've decided I'm reading Chain of Gold by Cassandra Clare. I've already read all of the other Shadowhunter books. Well, I shouldn't say that. There's a couple, like, short story collections I haven't read, but I've read most of the main Shadowhunter series, and it's been a while. I don't think I read any Shadowhunter books in 2021. It was 2022 when I last finished it. So I have been missing this world a lot. I'm really happy to go back to it. And there's a really bad glare here, but hopefully you can see how freaking gorgeous this cover is. Yes, love it. Next up, I'm continuing with the Percy Jackson series with book number 3, The Titan's Curse. Dun dun dun. It's very interesting watching this book while I know they're developing this TV series. Hopefully I can finish the book series before the TV series comes out so I can kind of compare the two. Last but not least, I picked out a book box book to read, and that is going to be The River Has Teeth by Erica Waters. Again, don't know much about this book. It's supposed to be kind of a mix of fantasy / thriller. I'm only not that far in. Really, really enjoying this one so far. So hopefully this turns out to be as exciting of a read as I hope it will be. those are my ambitious reads for March. I have some travel coming up, some other things. Who knows if I'll even get through them all. We'll see. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're not already, please subscribe to my channel for more bookish videos coming your way soon. Happy reading!